Welcome to the Hunter's Advantage podcast, where a group of budget-minded hunters scour the woods for whitetail bucks and whatever other big game is in season. Tune in each week to hear the hilarious public and private land hunting stories and mistake-filled lessons learned. We believe that every hunt brings us closer to God and that we exist to share the good news. And now, your hosts, Christian Babcock and Jake Gaylord.
Listen, guys, we wouldn't be able to do the podcast if it wasn't for you all. So we just want to say that you guys are greatly appreciated, and thank you for following along each week.
And speaking of support, we are partnered with Out on a Limb Manufacturing, and I can tell you from firsthand experience, Matt and Chase are great, down-to-earth guys, and they make some of the best saddle hunting products out there. Whether you're looking for a set of climbing sticks or a mobile, lightweight, hang-on tree stand, or maybe you're even a one-sticker.
You mean tree Pilates?
Yes, tree Pilates. If you've been to the grocery store or the gas station lately, you know that Uncle Joe is doing his absolute worst to take all your money. That's why we need hunting gear that lasts year after year. And trust me, I've been rocking the same Out on a Limb Shakar climbing sticks for 4 years and the Ridge Runner 2.0 saddle hunting platform for a few years as well. This gear is built to last.
We can confidently say that Out on a Limb is the best bang for your buck.
And it's the best gear if you want to deflate a big old buck.
Ooh. Make sure you use code HNTA15 at outonalimbmfg.com for 15% off anything on their website.
So if you can show them the same support that you guys show us, please go to outonalimbmfg.com and use code HNTA15 for 15% off at checkout. Now let's get back to the podcast. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Hunter's Advantage podcast. Today we're joined by Tyler and KC of The Element. Thanks for jumping on with us, guys.
Glad to be here, dude. Thanks for having us.
Did a bunch of jumping.
Oh, yeah.
So for those who aren't following Casey and Tyler, they are a deadly duo out of the best state behind Oklahoma, but they're from Texas. They are best known for traveling around in their buck truck and putting down both big giant bucks and Mexican food, from what I've been told.
That's true.
But
lots of Mexican food, except for Casey doesn't eat anymore.
Hey, I ate Mexican food for lunch. Did you? I went to Gorditas and I ate the tortillas too.
No, you didn't.
I did. Yes, sir.
He's not a carnivore anymore.
You all were in Montana on a trip. How'd that go?
It went well. This is kind of a work trip. We got to see a lot of our friends. Got to do a little fishing on the Yellowstone River, which was much more of a float than a fish. That's okay. It happens sometimes. We thought it was going to be a better day than it was as far as the fishing goes, but the company was good and scenery was nice. And then out of that, developed a whole new state to hunt this year because our friend Mark Kenyon and us are going to do a little hunting together. I won't tell you where yet. We got to go make sure it's going to happen. But we tend to fly by the seat of our pants, kind of as you implied on the buck truck thing. You know, the idea is we travel the country, but we don't always know exactly where we're headed when we leave the house. You know, like it's kind of like, there's a couple states we could go to, and we're still trying to figure out the fall right now, as you can tell.
Have you guys ever got in the car not knowing where you're going, like you're just headed north?
Not completely. I mean,
we usually have a destination in mind, and then depending on circumstance, that's when things get crazy.
It's like the state is decided, but outside of that, it might be a little different. I mean, there's been once or twice when we left and we're going to stop and look at something on the way in one state, and if it didn't work out, then we'd go to another state, and we've done that a few times. Depending on how many trucks are parked at the parking lot and stuff, you know.
Oh, yeah.
That's understandable.
I feel you. So what have you guys been up to this summer? Obviously, you took your fishing rod on a hike, but have you been finding any velvet bucks or scouting or running trail cameras?
I saw a velvet spike about an hour ago.
Golly,
sure enough, yeah,
sweating it out.
I went out and picked some pears out of a friend's pear tree. I picked 20 gallons of pears, and we pulled up. There was a velvet spike and a doe and a fawn eating those pears out from underneath that pear tree, stealing the pears. So,
are they soft?
I ate one. They're crispy, but they're good. I'll bring you some.
I know where some
I'm gonna make some preserves. I love pear preserves. So,
you like nature preserves too?
I
don't
do.
you?
I like it all. Man, pear trees are just where it's at for deer. I'm about to plant 100 of those on my place. They just love them. But as far as scouting goes, I'm going to go scout tomorrow, a different state. But that's, we were talking about a lot this week in Montana with some friends of ours. Dave Smith. Dave, boys, he is a funny guy. He's good at telling jokes and also just funny off the cuff, but he hunts blacktails a lot. And we were talking, he asked me, kind of the small talk kind of thing. Well, you got any big bucks on camera? Which is all way better than like, how's the weather at home? If we're going to do small talk, let's do that one. Right. And he asked if I'd had any cameras out for bucks. And I said, man, quite honestly, in our experience, at least locally at home, it's the correlation is so small from what you find in the summer versus what you have in the fall that it's just not even hardly worth running cameras in the summer for us. And
but that's probably that could be like property specific thing. Like if you were, it's not to say like if you're listening, don't do that. You know what I mean? I mean, that's something to put a test to, I think, and see if it correlates for you.
Is there a certain state or certain area, maybe in Texas, that is actually worth it that you guys have found, or is it mostly just like kind of hit and miss?
Man, I don't know in Texas of a place that we've hunted that we would have seen a lot of summer scouting pay off. I would think more like your heartland stuff, your Midwest,
Right.
If you've got bean fields, like, locating bucks, and like that here in a, 3 or 4 weeks, they're going to really change their kind of home range. A lot of them, when they get velvet off, and you'll lose them. But I think a lot of those bucks come back to that summer range at some point during the rut. So gives you hope, Yeah.
One of our camera guys has a trail camera out on his place in Central Texas.
Oh, that's
and
true.
He'll have the same bucks that he does right now all deer season. He's the only one kind of in the general area that really has consistent corn. I think that helps a whole lot, and he just has a good doe family group there, so he gets some consistency. But we don't hunt that place, but I see the pictures a lot.
Yeah, I mean, you guys do a ton of out-of-state hunts, and obviously it's a little difficult to go do summer scouting in 5 states and continue to hunt those states throughout the fall. So when did you guys, I remember you used to do the Map Scout Challenge. I don't know if that was in the summer or not, but when did you kind of transition from not doing a ton of summer scouting to mostly e-scouting and then maybe boots on the ground during the season?
So in 2017, which is pre Map Scout Challenge, we ran cameras like hard on some public land in Texas, a few different places. And we had one spot that was just like, I mean, there were bucks everywhere, and they were in there in daylight a lot. Most of the time, like most every day, if you had pictures of them, you had pictures in daylight. And a lot of it was morning. It was a real thick area. They were coming back to bedding in the morning, and they would just browse all that stuff around in that thick vegetation, being that there wasn't a whole lot of ag around. And then they would go to bed. And so we ended up hunting opening weekend, maybe opening day, in that location. And we hunted way up in a nice big tree that we could see pretty far, even though it was real thick. We could see, down into the stuff a little bit. It was the best cold front we've ever seen on like a early season, like opening weekend or right in there opening week. I mean, it was like very, very nice weather. And I think we might have like heard pigs, but we sat there.
Pigs like 70 yards and they smelled us. That's all it was.
We sat all day. I mean,
he hates all day sits. I talked him into one.
It was the worst, dude. It was the worst. And we sat there, didn't see nothing. It has happened since, but did you? Sparingly. 2021.
I hadn't sat with you for a whole day.
That's true. Yeah, we haven't sat together for a whole day. That's unfortunate because we actually entertained each other.
We might actually laugh. That was good.
But in 21 in Colorado, I said, I was in there all day. I did move the stand like 70 yards.
Hey,
that's pretty much an all day set. But I needed something in the middle of the day, So anyway, but that particular instance was like, we're like, what in the world are we doing, man? Like, this should have been, we should have scored on this deal. We got the weather we needed and everything. So we kind of, which I think it's important that people would pay their dues in that manner, to learn some stuff that allows them to, I guess not take off the summer, but like not do as much boot scouting in the summertime. Like you need to learn some stuff from that helps you to correlate to your map scouting. That way we sit around on an e-scout all day, not all day, all summer long, almost every day, at least for a little bit. So now we just understand what it looks like in real life by looking at the map better than we would have, because we were able to go out and correlate that stuff during the summer and say, oh, this is what a persimmon thicket looks like on the maps. So now when we go, on the map, I can just find persimmon thickets and make pretty decent assumptions about what that looks like or whatever.
The Map Scout Challenge was actually really cool. I learned a lot from it. And I think one of the things that I learned more than like the actual map scouting was just kind of what different regions of the country is like or are like. And so it kind of fulfilled itself in that sense. I don't really, as far as like having a need to go do something, I don't need to go travel around a lot and map scout different, because I just kind of know regionally what a lot of stuff looks like now. And I'm very thankful for that. And one of the other things is that, a lot of the stuff we do, almost all the stuff we do is videoed. And Tyler was our sole editor at that point in time. And I think one Map Scout Challenge, the second one, 1 terabyte.
Yeah, I think that's right.
It was like
something like
an
that.
insane amount of footage.
It was all shot in 1080. So
yeah,
like,
oh, dude,
yeah. So it's not like,
footage.
That's a lot of 1080 footage, and it was. I mean, that project was awesome. Like I enjoyed doing that, but I talked about this on live the other day. But like, when you look at like the payoff versus what it costs the input into that thing, it was just kind of a little lopsided because, only so many people are interested in e-scouting for one, because it's not the most exciting, right? It'd be like trying to sell a book maybe or something, potentially very much an uphill
I haven't
climb.
read since 3rd grade.
Yeah. And then the other part of it is like, well, if so-and-so is not out of state hunter, like, do they care to, travel 2 states over and go hunt in Missouri or whatever? So, it's potentially kind of niche. And I think like overall those videos have kind of ticked and done well. But we stopped doing that after 2 years because of a couple of reasons. But one is, like we would have to drive across country or fly. And then what we would do is, we would like, a lot of times we'd meet a friend in an area, have them pick us up, drive us around. We would set cameras after we made all these assumptions. We would talk about what we were seeing. We did screen recordings on phones and on computers and stuff. And then we let the camera soak for like a couple of months. And then you have to get somebody to go get it. I remember a couple of guys that went and got one for us in Missouri. We had to like reach out to the podcast audience to get somebody to go get it. So these guys were like, yeah, we'll go check it, and send it back to you and mail the SD card to you or whatever. They go and do that. And then they get back and they're like, never again. We will never go where you guys send us again. That was terrible, And so we just had trouble with all the logistics of that. Not to mention it costs a lot of money to go travel and do those things, buy plane tickets. And we had a little help from Onyx, I think the second year on it, but it still was just not like it was. Well, I don't think we even made money on it, which we could have used at the time, So it was just that thing. And then also there's this weird feeling that we always kind of battled, and we do this a lot with our content, our videos especially. It's like, how much do you show that's realistic versus how much could potentially hurt you? And there's this line, and sometimes you go over here and then sometimes you go over there a little bit, and you kind of just try to pull back and just stay on that line as much as possible, because I want to show the most real thing that there is. But I know that every once in a while something's ugly, and like you can't, there's, for whatever reason, we feel at least convicted in some moment to be like, that's too far. We went too far out there. Sorry, let's go back. And so there were people that like, and we never tried to put any spots that were more than like a half mile. We didn't want to like go ruin somebody's spot that was 1.5 miles or 2 miles back in there, right? That they worked real hard to find. So we tried to keep everything fairly close, like 3/4 of a mile or in. And there was always somebody that was like, y'all found my spot and put a dot on it and y'all are terrible and this and that, or, you highlighted my property, my public property that I love so much or whatever, and it was kind of, I don't know. I felt bad, but at the same time, I was like, I really just wanted people to see this is what goes through my mind. Maybe it'll help you. You know what I mean? Like it.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be like I could learn from anybody. So I just felt like that could have helped them.
End up having a guy who was like, "Hey, I hunted that spot and killed a 140."
Yes. Yeah.
I saw that on one of y'all's comments one time.
Yeah.
Wasn't that?
Yeah. We've actually debated taking that video off and going and hunting that
spot. You'll meet him out there, each one of you guys with your stands.
Hey, bro,
on your
let's
back.
see the other side of the tree.
Yeah.
I am going to go summer scout a place tomorrow, though, out of state. So it's not that we don't do it at all, but it's kind of it's just kind of particular. This is a piece of private that we got permission on, and one of the things about hunting public land is a lot of times, at least, you have what feels like a functional infinite amount of land for you to go mess around on. It might be 4,000 acres, which the reason you're not killing deer on 4,000 acres is because you aren't where the deer is. Whereas like these are like 5 40-acre pieces that are kind of spread out through a county. And so there's kind of more of like a dynamic of understanding what the deer are doing on that property, what deer are living on it versus how they're moving through it and that sort of thing. So I think in that sense, especially on private land, I do like the summer scouting thing. And maybe that's another thing too I haven't even thought about. But one of the deals with public is you have the extra factor of other hunters, that all this work you can do for summer scouting, and then all of a sudden everybody shows up and it just kind of like mixes everything up, not in a bad way, but the deer are going to do different things because there's people in there. So you never can really factor that in until the fall.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, we have 95% of our audience are the guys that get to go 4 or 5, maybe 3 weekends a year. And it's like, they're making this decision between, do I go summer scout or do I get to hunt another weekend in the fall? Right. So, and a lot of that has, like you guys are talking about, has to come down to efficiency with e-scouting, being able to correlate what you see with your eyes in person and what that looks like on a map. And you're talking about persimmons, but what are some of the other kind of subtle things that you've learned through spending hundreds of hours looking at OnX on your phone that like you've been able to correlate, like that's what this is, and that people don't understand that?
I think that the biggest thing that jumps out to me is if I look at a property, say I'm hunting a plain state, let's say Ontario, since it's not in the U.S. I don't know. Just
some guy's pissed right now.
Yeah, that's right. Alberta. Yeah. When I look at it and it looks barren, I can almost guarantee you it's not barren. That it's got tall grass, it's got places for animals to hide, and that in the past year I've really thought about that a lot. And I don't know if it's revelatory for me to say that, but people a lot of times when they map scout, they're looking for trees. And whitetail live in the woods. The whitetail live in the grass, and they live in the swamps, and they live in all those places. They live where people don't mess with them. They live where they can feel safe, where the does are, where there's a food source. And so I think, to answer your question directly, it's that you don't have to look for what looks like super heavy cover on a map for there to be deer there. And a lot of times that's where the actual scouting pays off, because you'll show up and you'll be like, oh, wow, that's not cut hay. That's 4-foot cattails or whatever it may be. Yeah. And it makes a difference.
Yeah. Cattails are something that I've learned to identify a little better. Plum thickets, which is good bedding in a lot of areas. And then like one thing we've been able to get a lot better at is identifying a cattle trail from a deer trail. Because a lot of states and especially the feds they'll run cattle and graze, run cattle leases or whatever on their properties. And it gets really frustrating and kind of confusing at times to be like, oh, there's a major trail going right there. I can't tell if it's a deer trail or a cow trail. So yeah, those would be a couple of things that I've learned to identify over time, right off the top of the head.
Have you guys ever ran into a predicament that maybe you e-scouted or even went and put boots on the ground to a certain area that you kind of X'd off a map, and then maybe during the rut or late season or something like that, you've actually found out that it's really good, but it just might not be really good during the summertime?
Yeah. I can think of one. I think this qualifies for what you're saying. I killed a deer that was trying to drink out of a cattle trough one time on public ground, but it was just I don't want to say it's dumb because it was awesome, but like it was the most uncanny spot to hang a saddle in a tree to kill a deer. It's the thing everybody walks by to go into the wild stuff, right?
Right.
And you just kind of are out pretty much in a cattle pen. And the grass is like practically shorter than a fairway on a golf course, right? And that's where I shot the deer, and he died before he made it to the fence. So it's kind of weird.
There was grass in there, was
There
there?
barely. It was low.
It was. That was a cool hunt. I got to film him on that actually. Yeah. One thing I can think of, there's this weird state full of weirdos that I've hunted before. That I like. So we've hunted this area before, and looking at different properties and different things on like bigger properties, like features or whatever. I've seen where like there's been where like I will focus in on some of the best cover early on. That's what, like when you look at big area, you're like, oh, there's some cover. Let me zoom in on that and look at it. So over the course of a year, like I'm hunting these different, more thick areas, I guess. And then last year, I was like, man, there's got to be something different. There's a ton of pressure right now. I don't know, what we're going to do if we don't find, a different place here to hunt. And, I was there for a couple of days or whatever, or a couple of hunts. And then the guys were going to be there for a few more hunts. So it wasn't a long hunt. I started looking on the maps and I'm really like, okay, there's something, there's got to be something different. I'm looking, scouring. And I find where like a corner of a property, a drainage just barely nicks the corner of that thing. And then I look, there's ag food source on one side. And then the draw carries down and goes into really deep canyons in the middle of a big private piece. So I'm like, worth a try. We went in there and hung a camera, and there was a couple of nice bucks on it. And then one of our camera guys went in there and rattled that buck away. But yeah,
not in away.
He rattled him away.
Off.
I think he was trying to do that. I'm not sure he really wanted to kill that one. It was pretty big. But yeah, so I mean, I just think like sometimes that's something that like I don't know. I had to really like I overlooked it at first and I had to really like dive in on the maps and go, okay, what can I do that's creative, or how can I look more detailed at this map?
I can think of another place too. As he's talking, I have another answer. There's a piece of public ground that is a riparian area. It's seasonally floods that we hunt, and if you walk through it, it's just like an expanse of that open timber ash tree bottom, if you know what I'm talking about, like in the river bottoms and stuff where there's just no actual cover. There's canopy, and then it's just monotonous ground of like 12-inch ash trees, and it's just walk through country. But I think that there was a dynamic. This is where hunter pressure, I think, if I can point to a point where hunter pressure was like key in having encounters, it was on this. I think that those trees are practically impossible to hang in. I was hanging my saddle like 6 feet up and just having to stay really still because I was a Sasquatch on the side of a tree. I mean, it was just, there's no cover at all. But I had like, and still will go back and hunt that, and had like 4 or 5 different good encounters in there because deer were using that as a travel corridor, because I think that people were hunting up on the hill and then people were hunting down right on the river where there was a little more cover. But in that just flat, there's no people anywhere in there. And it was hard. I almost had to, I can tell you what it was. There was, it came a flood and rained like 4 days. So the ground got real soft, and
Oh no.
Oh, are we back?
Oh, yeah. Gotcha. You said the ground got real soft.
Yeah. And I could see the deer where the deer had been walking through there, and that trail wasn't there earlier in the season when I scouted it. So it's like they had adjusted their patterns, and I could only tell that because of the mud. And then I started seeing a rub line pop up through there. And I'm not big on rub lines. I don't like take a lot from them. I think to me, when you see a rub line, that's just a direction of travel that bucks take, maybe multiple bucks, maybe one buck, and they just make rubs along the way. And over the course of a fall, you see the line of rubs because they make different ones. But it does mean that there are bucks using the area. And sure enough, it's a place that without those two signs, I would have never even considered hunting it. Well, we had some camera data from there that was pretty interesting too.
Is this where I think it is?
Yeah, the 3-point.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And I think we kind of like really started to narrow in on that spot because of summer scouting.
Yeah, sure enough. We saw some coyotes in there that time.
Yeah.
Camera.
That was one of the so I actually hung a camera in there at one point, just not far from the road, and all of a sudden, like, we checked it on the last time we were hunting that year, and there was bucks everywhere. And we were just like, okay, well, maybe we should actually look in here. And we looked that summer and found out a lot more. We were finding like hair where deer were bedding in that, like, kind of in the low spots that didn't have any vegetation. So it was kind of weird, but it wasn't like beds. It was just like in those low spots, cool air probably settled or whatever. And there's wind blowing through there because it's floodplain. There's not a whole lot of under vegetation. And yeah, there was like, we would just like all of a sudden start seeing hair on this kind of transition. So pretty interesting.
Yeah, that is one of the layers that I found really useful in Onyx specifically is the historical oaks layer. I've had a lot of success with that. Do you guys use any of those type of layers or stuff for food, or how do you guys kind of go about that?
Well, we've used that before for sure. Like we'll use that in like in Arkansas and stuff like that sometimes.
Everything's pretty sharp on those oaks too. I mean, it'll show like one pixel of oaks, and sure enough, there'll be an oak tree there. It's like, what Forest Service guy or whatever came in here and found that oak tree? It's kind of weird. I think crop data is one that I use a ton. I still like to check it and make sure, because it's on the previous year tax information is where they get that. So whenever the farmer had it in corn last year, it'll be beans this year, potentially, depending on where you're at in the country. But I mean, honestly, I'm looking at wheat and alfalfa as much as I am corn and beans. A lot of the areas we hunt have those. Alfalfa is not really something you rotate. Wheat is in sometimes, and other times it's not. But yeah, that crop. I mean, Tyler's got his up right now, and sure enough, he's not going to show you because the pins are real sweet. But there's a ton of wheat in that area he's looking at right now. Because that's what deer eat in the wintertime.
We'll use. So one thing I've been looking at lately when I'm looking at different places to go is the Boone and Crockett layer there. It's like it shows like your heat trend. It's a heat map for the Boone and Crockett stuff. So like it'll show you where like in the last 10 years where more booners are getting shot than were the previous 10 years. So it's not necessarily that like it's got a bunch of booners coming from it, but like if there was 0 in the 5 or 10 years prior and there's 2, then it would be on a warming trend, So I'd look at that like when I've been looking for different places to hunt or whatever, which I don't need any more places to hunt, but
you won't.
Like I kind of have like a subtle goal to try to shoot a deer in a new state every year. So it hasn't been every year that I've done that, but I've had it happen quite a bit. So I'm going to try to keep doing that until I shoot deer in every state that whitetails exist.
What about y'all? What's your favorite layer?
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay, fine. No, I usually don't really look too much into that, at least like the crop layers and all that, because where we primarily hunt, it's like more mountainous and stuff. But Christian put me on the historical oak layer last year or 2 years ago, whatever it was, and he pulled it up. And of course, where we hunt, it's like pines and oaks, and that's basically all you get down there. But it was just a sea of red, and I was like, all these are saying it's oaks, because usually you'll have just mainly pines, and there'll be a little splotch of oaks, a little oak flat. You want to key in on that from what we've gathered, and it was just a sea. And I was like, that thing's wrong, like something's glitched, like that can't be accurate. Well, we go down this ridge, it's like 2 miles from this nearest road, and it wasn't wrong one bit. Like it was just oak after oak after oak for like probably half a mile section, it seemed like. And it got to the point where we're walking through there and it's like, this is almost too much. Like we can't really key in on an area, it seems like. So since then, I mean, I don't know. I haven't really put much, like a lot of thought into it, but yeah, that's about all I've been doing.
I use that layer the majority of the places that we hunt. We don't hunt a ton of big ag places, and then if we do, it's mainly private. So it's like I can see when I'm going in there to hunt. But I use that historical oaks layer. This year I had dropped.
You use that corn feeder layer, is what you
I use that too.
private.
Absolutely,
I use it too.
on private.
So
Yeah, yeah, on private for sure. But I drew out for a recurve hunt in Oklahoma, and it was there was just this long, skinny creek with just oaks all along it. And I went in there, they were red oaks, just big, 50-cent pieces. I was like, man, those look good. Went in there and shot a buck the first day. So I use that a lot. You know, you guys talked about it earlier, is like the struggle sometimes is having too much land to hunt. And that's kind of like, that's why I think those layers and stuff are really important, because it makes something that's really big, really small. Right. Mm-hmm. And helps you kind of key in, which is, there's a lot of people that I think listen to this and maybe listen to y'all's podcast that that's their struggle, right? Making something big, small. It's like, where do I go from here?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point, man. That's what we do a lot, is just eliminate ground pretty much, you know, like we'll spend days eliminating ground before we actually pick a spot we feel confident in and we're going to go, you know? So there's really no point if you don't feel a lot of confidence in going out sometimes. Like the point would be just to continue eliminating ground until, because they exist somewhere, you know what I mean? And if they existed everywhere, then everybody would kill them. Mm-hmm. So
yeah,
you got to eliminate all the spots until you find where they're at.
It is kind of crazy that you bring that up, because it's weird how many times we'll go on a hunting trip where, say you're hunting a national forest and there's, 60,000 acres or something crazy, how much of your time you spend in a 10-acre area. You just like kind of get it pinned, like pinpointed. Is like, hey, I know exactly what's going on there. And maybe you got 2 of them, right? Wind dependent or something. But like you got 60,000 acres and you're waiting on that perfect northwest to be able to get in that one tree, because that's the spot that you want to be. And I don't care, you could be hunting 5 acres as much as they are 60. It doesn't really matter, 60,000. It's all about that, finding that exact spot that's going to be the killing tree.
Yeah, at that time. Something interesting I heard, what's his name? Parker McDonald from Southern Ground Hunting. You guys know him?
Yeah.
Well, really? He came up with the phrase, it's X marks the spot, and I forget which podcast I listened on it, but what he does is he'll basically draw like a little X on a map. How big it is, I guess that's up to you, but he tries to fit like a piece of diversity in each corner of that X, right? And so like for ours, it's like, okay, we got a ridge of pines, then we have an oak flat that meets that follows along this creek, and it's near a clear cut. You know what I mean? So you have all these pieces of diversity, because obviously we all know that deer are creatures of edge habitat. And ever since he said that, that's kind of stuck with me and honestly helped me out a lot when, again, kind of like what we're talking about, trying to narrow down big old chunks of land, to make it more attainable in a way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I feel more confident when I have 2 or 3 reasons to believe that that's the spot for sure, man. That's what, you can't just like, people will do whole podcasts on, saddles, hunting in, saddles in hill country or the military crest or whatever, all the stuff that you've kind of hot words you've heard or whatever. And at the end of the podcast, you'll still be confused, like what you're actually, I know I'm looking for that military crest. I know it's at 2/3 up the hill. There's a billion hills out there. Like, which one do I pick, And that's one thing I think a lot of people forget to talk about is like, well, you pick the one that has a really good white oak on it and, something else, right? For whatever reason, the wind is different there or whatever, that could be a million things. But I think about that all the time. Like, could be a fence crossing, but they have to have a reason to cross that fence right there. So what are the reasons, and that use that to understand which wind you need to hunt it on. You know what I mean? So
what floats y'all's boat? Like, let's say you e-scout an area that you've never been to before, and then you walk in, what's y'all's go-to sign that you look for, and you're like, okay, I'm going to set up right here?
Trail. I
Trail.
like hunting trails. I mean, that's my number one deal.
Yeah.
A scrape is great, man. I feel real good if there's a scrape there, but like more than anything, I'm looking for a trail because I'm looking for deer that are traveling because I'm trying to kill them out of a tree, and I need them to come by me instead of me have to go to them, most of the time. So
trail's a good answer. My mind went to scrape, but trail is a better answer. That's why Tyler kills more deer than me. But I do like a fresh scrape, especially if you're talking about the right time of year. If you find a scrape that's freshly worked October 25th through November 5th, I mean, that's in most places, that's a really good place to be. But trail is the right answer. Go with that first. Especially if
it's beat you to it, man.
If you can correlate it with the reason they're traveling it. Don't hunt a trail leading to a food source in the morning because you're probably going to booger the deer when you're hanging your set. Or don't hunt a trail that leads out to a bedding knob in the evening. Well, at least be conscious of where you're blowing your wind, right? Like you gotta, it's that multiple factor thing that y'all were just talking about, right? A trail is good, but you got to know what to do with it when you find it.
That's right. Yep.
So what?
At the Hunter's Advantage, we live by the KISS slogan.
You were not supposed to tell them that.
No, I meant we like to keep it simple, stupid. All jokes aside, Exodus is the definition of keeping it simple. Let's say you aren't really sure what arrow setup you should run. The Exodus Arrow Builder will help you build the right arrows for your exact setup.
Or if you don't have time to change those trail cam batteries in the dog days of summer, Exodus has a great selection of cell cameras and regular trail cameras. And if you pair them with one of their solar panels, you'll be set for a long while. I've shot over a dozen deer and a big old black bear in Saskatchewan with these arrows, and I trust them to fly right and get the job done. And they have something for everyone with the Exodus NIS micro diameter arrows or the Exodus MMTs.
So if you want to save money on Exodus arrows, cell cameras, or anything else they got on their website, make sure to check out ExodusOutdoorGear.com and use code HA10 for 10% off.
Once again, that's ExodusOutdoorGear.com, and make sure to use code HA10 for 10% off at checkout. Now let's get back to the podcast.
Well,
what mind do you guys pay to like rubs and beds and droppings? Is that just more visual confirmation that they're in this area, or is that not data that you guys kind of like would craft a strategy or a setup around?
I would never craft a strategy. Well, I shouldn't say never. Out of all those, the thing that perks my ears the most, maybe just because it's kind of like middle school, is the poop thing. I mean, really though, like
they're here.
Yeah, it's exactly right, and you can tell a lot of how recently they've been here and what they're doing. If you find, a bunch of stuck together tiny little droppings that make a big old turd, it's pretty close to where that deer bedded because it did that the night before. If you find them and they're really green, that deer's eating wheat, and you can then kind of triangulate almost, hey, here's where this deer's pooping. Where's the closest wheat? And it might be a mile over there. And that's where that deer's going. So I really do. I mean, poop. I mean, some places there's a lot of deer, so there's just a lot of poop and you can't learn a lot. Right. But like, I can't tell you how many times I'll be walking through the woods and you walk underneath the tree and then there's a bunch of deer poop there. And then you look up and like, oh, this is a persimmon tree or this is an oak tree, and you realize why all that is there, because that's a food source for them. Mm-hmm. Rubs are cool. I get excited. I don't really know what to do with them. Bedding, I like doe bedding better than I do buck bedding, at least in the stuff that we hunt. Buck bedding is not very consistent in most of the places I've been and do hunt. And I think the further you go northeast, maybe the more consistent that stuff is. I don't want to devalue it or degrade it because I know a lot of other people kill deer on it, but it's just not something that works well for me, or I would say us, really.
No, I mean, I think when like the first few years we scouted a lot together because I was the cameraman. I mean, I had the camera and there was a crazy guy that would run around in front of it a lot, and so we spend a lot of time scouting. And one thing he does really well, dude, it'd blow your mind. He'll be like, there's a rub. And then he'll turn around and start walking, and you'll walk for 45 seconds before you get to that rub. Like it had to have been 150 yards through the middle of the woods. You're like, how did you see that, dude? I mean, just he sees everything. It really does. Like, is just like completely observant of all the things in the woods. Like you can't beat him to sign really. So I try, and I do sometimes, but very rarely. And so like one thing that I noticed when we scouted together though a lot was that he's really good at seeing on a sign, and then I would ask why, and he didn't have an answer, and neither did I. That's why I asked why. And so what we decided was that, I mean, just because you see a rub, you don't have to figure out why. Just store it. You know what I mean? Like keep it in your mind, because there's going to be like, if there's not more rubs, then it means nothing. I mean, it really doesn't mean anything. If there's not more rubs, or if there's not like a scrape over here, or like a corner crossing, or whatever, like if there's not something else that gives you a reason as to why, then you store it, but you don't really have anything to do with it at the end of the day. And I think there was days that we'd go out and I would ask why 100 times, and he would say, I don't know. And then we would go on, and then at the end of the day, we wouldn't, like, it didn't do anything for us, really, and I'm not saying that stuff didn't come up like a year later or 3 months later, or, next week or whatever. But overall, like, you go out and scout, and some days it's just like, it's like playing in a football game. Like you just can't win. Sometimes you just like, they just got your number that day and nothing makes sense to you. And then some days, like, you can't lose. Right. And so everything starts connecting or whatever. So I think you just got to go out scouting and understand that, like, there's a lot of whys, and just bank as much of that stuff as you can, which is one reason we started filming. I mean, that was one helpful part of the filming, was that, like, we could go back. We did this PLC series that, 17 people watched for 4 years or whatever. And it was just like, it was PLC, Public Land Chronicles. And it was just us going out with a camera. It'd be 4 minutes, 8 minutes, whatever. And we just show what we saw. And really, like 2 of the 17 was me and him, because we go back and be like, oh, that was that one time we saw that. And, that's why that's there now, because we've seen this other piece of the property that, everything makes sense now. So I think it's really, again, like, you go in, and I know, like, you go out of state, you want to kill that day or the day after, because you're going to have to go home in a few days. But really, you need to have already, like, I like when I kill on public land and out of state, I almost always have a really good feeling before I ever see the ground.
Yeah.
Like, I'm
you
like,
call your shot a lot.
I'm just like, man, the map sets up well, and I've seen it from the truck or something like that, maybe, like the area or whatever.
There's one type of rub that I really like, and that's a signpost rub, especially if it's a year-to-year type rub where multiple bucks are using the rub and they've used it the last 2 years. That tells me that rub means more than the rub. That's a hub of activity. And there's probably a scrape. There's deer spending a lot of time in that area. But yes, what floats my boat, actually, deer sightings. That's why I think I spend a decent amount of time on the ground, because I like to kind of run around, and if I can see deer, I feel a whole lot better about it. Or you can ask Tyler, dude, if they stopped letting me hunt, I just drive around and look for deer. I love seeing deer out of the truck.
That's why I try to drive a lot. I'm like, this dude,
I'll stop and just look at him for 10 minutes.
No, it's more because he will see it. Like, if he's driving, there's two things, right? Like, we're at risk. Our lives are at risk. And then there's also this thing where, like, he's going to miss a few deer. But if I'm driving, like, we're not too at risk, and he's seeing everything at that point, so.
But, I mean, and this is, we're kind of joking about it a little bit, but I do take something serious from it. If we're driving in South Texas, which is a place there's no public land, so we can talk about that. And I see some deer on a property that there's no chance I have permission to hunt it, but I see that they're doing a certain thing. Say they're eating mesquite pods, or say they're drinking water, or whatever it may be. Like, that's a pattern. It's like bass fishing, right? Like, I can throw a blue-tailed black worm over this, weed bed over here and catch a bass. Well, I know I can go over there where there's another weed bed and do the same thing. And deer hunting is a lot like that. You see a buck that's got a doe on lockdown out in a weird spot. Yeah, you might not can hunt but you know what they're doing. You're like, oh man, that's the thing that's going on right now. I need to be near that. I can think about a time where we were seeing a bunch of deer in some really weird spots in late season underneath some trees. And we're like, they have to be eating. What are they doing? There weren't oak trees. We couldn't figure it out. Well, ends up
Some of our guys thought they were oak trees.
some of our guys thought that they were, who knows, they were goofballs. But ends up those trees, something to do with maybe the leaf matter underneath the tree, or the fact that it did have, canopy cover earlier in the year. That was the only spot there was green vegetation anywhere in the country. It's a bad drought. And there would be green grass underneath these leafless tree trunks out here in the middle of a cattle pasture. And there'd be deer out there eating it. And we correlated that and killed a deer off of that pattern pretty much. It was insane, and I'm not saying I'm good at it. We just couldn't believe it happened.
He's good at it. I'm telling you, like, I'm not kidding right now. Like, I would put him up against anybody to observe something and like critically think about it and then be like, hey, that's what they're doing. Like, it's real. He's super creative. He's very brilliant. I mean, I'll speak for him because like I'm legitimately impressed with the way he does that kind of stuff.
That's awesome. I mean, what you're describing sounds like someone who's not afraid to kind of get in the game. And it seems like there's a lot of folks that it's like, I don't know, I've been this way before. It's like this over-analyzation of like you're saying, trying to find a why behind every little piece of sign. It's like, I find one big mature buck bed here. It's like, this is where he is, and I need to hunt right over this. And then you look at the deer research color studies, and it's like, okay, he has 47 different beds this month. And it's like, I try to just take away all that sort of stuff that clutters my thoughts and just try to develop, like you're saying, themes, right? And then just try to get in the game and be aggressive, especially on public land, especially on public.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yeah. Well, it's hard because I don't know. I'm kind of the opposite. Like, I can't just go with the flow most of the time. Like, I'll take 45 minutes and like try to make a decision if I'm sitting in this tree or that tree that's like 15 yards apart. And one of these days, Christian and I joke about it. It's like, you're going to be halfway up a tree and then you're going to have like a big old 150 walk by you. And then, just stuff like that. But, I lost my train of thought. That happens to me a lot.
I'm the same way, man. Like I will look at a couple of trees for 20 or 30 minutes. Like I've told guys that haven't ever hunted with me on, they're camera guys or whatever. Like if they ever, when somebody's kind of new, and even still, like those guys, like we'll get into mid-season, I haven't had to look at a tree too hard yet, and I'll stand there and I'll be like, okay, I'm not crazy. Just don't mess with me too much right now. I'm gonna think.
Don't put your bag on the ground.
Yeah, keep your bag on. I mean, you really do. Like, it's a big part of it is, when you're hunting with a camera guy, is managing. Like, he doesn't know what you're thinking, right? So you have to explain, hey, actually, we're 3 yards from a trail right there, and I really don't want to walk across it yet. So also don't put your bag right next to that trail either, But like overall, just telling guys like, man, I'm gonna stand here for a second. I'm gonna look at these 3 trees. Just don't think that I'm crazy or whatever. Just chill out for a second right here. And because I'll do the same thing. Like, I really do think the micro moves within a specific spot when you're bow hunting, they matter big time. When you're rifle hunting, not quite so much. But when you have to like get them to 35 or less to make a legit shot you feel great about, like,
depends how big they are. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I still. Hey, you're talking to the right guys here.
That's something that Tyler does so well, and I have such a different, like, haphazard approach to it sometimes. And when we were hunting together a lot, it wasn't like a conflict, but it was a thing that I would run into and realize, like, I would just very much be like, let's just get in the tree, and I'll figure out how to make a shot when I'm up there. And he's like, dude, the trail is going to be on the other side of the tree trunk from you. How are you going to do that? Things like that. And that's where his like analytical mind really works out on that stuff, because he's thought. I know it happens. It happened this year in South Dakota. You're in a weird position to shoot, but like overall, you almost always are figuring out a way to make sure that like your optimal strong side is where the deer are. Figure out the tree and I don't know. Would you take a 20-yard like kind of sketchy shot, or would you rather be in the tree that's 10 yards over and take a 30-yard like just money
I'll probably take a 30-yard money shot.
yeah.
I think just knowing how much torque I have in my bow hand.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I mean, like, I don't know. I spend a lot of time doing that. I mean, it hasn't like negatively affected me too much yet that I know. But you know, maybe one of these days,
South Dakota, even though he's
yeah.
in weird spot.
And maybe one of these days, I'm sitting there for 20 minutes, and a deer comes by, like again when I'm halfway up a tree, you know, whatever. But at the same time, like, we all have strengths, and it's not to say don't get better or try to be a little more this way than that way, but like, I mean, the things that like that, because just because KC doesn't do that doesn't mean he doesn't figure out a way. He's the guy that, like, when we were up in Montana this week, like, our boss is like, I don't worry about you, KC, coming up with questions. I mean, because he can just bow, like, his mind just moves so fast, and he has really good thoughts like that a lot. So in the moment when a deer comes up and stalls out behind a big sage bush, I mean, he's not afraid to snort wheeze it at 30 yards and make it walk a few more steps.
I'm afraid now that I did that. It scares me to watch it. But in the moment, I was able to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, it's you play to your strengths a little bit and try to get better little by little, you know.
By the way, if we want to talk about that situation a little bit, because you brought it up and you did it as well, and it worked.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you
Dude,
ever
don't
have
give away too many tips.
yeah,
here,
no,
you know?
but this is they aren't gonna go to our spots. If you ever have a mature buck on the ground and he's got you, but he doesn't know you're a danger yet, if you'll give him a real soft snort wheeze, they will take 2 or 3 steps to look at you better.
Is that a guarantee?
I mean, I've done it once and it worked.
I'm worried.
You heard it here.
Well, they can't sue me because they don't know me.
That's right.
But
I don't know where you live.
it's crazy what you can get away with on the ground, I guess would be the better thing. Like, if the deer doesn't recognize you as a human and as a threat, because those are kind of the same thing. They don't register, oh, human. They just threat or no threat. That's how their mind works, right? If a deer doesn't recognize you as a threat, you can do deer stuff, and that deer will be like, huh, interesting. Let's see more about that.
Are you doing that like physically with the call, or is that like something you're just doing with your nose or your mouth?
In
Or
the mouth, yeah.
Ear holes too.
And actually, I'm not that
Ear
great
holes.
at noise. Yeah. But there's a little squeak comes out the corner of my eye. But that little subtle, like, is that because I heard them do that before in the tree. You remember we were in a tree in Texas one time, and a 3-year-old did it to like a 1.5.
Yeah.
But it was like, we thought maybe he wanted to make that threatening sound, but didn't want to do something so loud that it would draw attention.
Yeah.
So
it was quiet.
Yeah, he did that little, it's just a little soft thing, and it's enough to where it's not startling to him, but it like kind of, it doesn't calm him down, but it makes him less jumpy.
Yeah.
Um,
I'd be scared to do it every time, but I probably would do it every time because so far we're 100% on it.
yeah, well, if you're full draw and he's locked up at 35 behind the sage bush, it's a good time to do it.
That's exactly right. There ain't a whole lot you can do, that's gonna help you or hurt you.
I wouldn't
worse.
want to let him just wheel out and run away.
It's crazy because when you do that, that buck like goes like that. He like loads and then he just kind of walks up
a little bit and walks up.
It's pretty cool, man. It's pretty cool. But I don't know. Like if you got nothing else, for sure. But if there's a chance for me, I'm like potentially not gonna risk it every time.
You're better off with they don't know you're there.
For sure.
But if they do, you gotta have a backup plan.
Yeah.
Win in full draw, man. You gotta like play your cards.
Yeah. What am I gonna do? Let down? No way.
What do we do? Not shoot?
Takes off running. I'm shooting. You know what I mean?
Punch that trigger, baby.
Oh, that's funny.
If you guys are anything like us, you love being in the deer woods and chasing big bucks. But there's another part of you that has that itch to chase other big game species.
If you've ever dreamed of chasing black bear, mule deer, or moose, Alberta, Canada is the land of opportunity for these adventure-style hunts.
Each year, hundreds of first-time visiting hunters from around the world come to Alberta for the options, quality, and accessibility that the land offers.
With over 1,800 Boone and Crockett entries and endless possibilities of taking multiple species on a single trip, Alberta is truly a paradise for a big game hunter. This is why we partnered up with the Alberta Professional Outfitters Society. To check it out, go to apos.ab.ca and click Find an Outfitter. From there, you can browse all the different big game species and hunting styles that fit with what you want out of the hunt.
Or you can send a free hunt inquiry through the follow the lead tool, and the outfitters who have what you are looking for will reach out to you directly.
So make sure to check out apos.ab.ca to learn all about hunting in Alberta and get connected to the right outfitter for you. Well, I'd like to talk a little bit about kind of, I mean, I know we a lot of people know your Genesis story, but one of the things that we do like to talk about is kind of keep it fun and relatable for people that listen to the podcast, right? So when you guys first started, filming and traveling and stuff, like how did that kind of go from the kind of the budget friendly mindset? So I think there's a lot of people that are listening to their podcasts every summer for inspiration, and they, don't think they can quite pull it off, but then they hear other people do it. So I'd kind of like to hear that story from your guys' perspective.
Yeah, you're going to be the one to start that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, so I started like becoming serious about video and my stuff in probably 2010 or 11. No, it would have been 2010. So right after I got out of college, and I had a buddy. I had no money for such a long time, y'all. Like I mean, truly, like, you call me a whitetail bum, but like at first I was a musician. I was a music bum or whatever, So like, which is a funny joke we have now.
Yeah,
I'm not a musician. I just play music. You know what I mean? But so I essentially like just didn't have money for a long, long time. I had a buddy who had got a camera in 2010. I rattled in a buck that was, hyped me up big time. He was smaller than I actually probably should have been shooting on that property. But I killed him. And that was the first time I did a self film with like a nice camera and stuff. And I don't even know where that footage is now. And then kind of continued on. A few years later, met a guy who wanted to help. He was super poor as well. Has now made something of himself, but not in this industry or whatever. But he's a very smart and creative guy. So he became very good with the camera, and we did some more high production stuff. And then I really was starting to, get into that. And then it just so happened that my music career kind of came to an end, touring wise, at least, about 2015 or 16. 2015, and met KC about the same time. It was probably a few months later, and just like I had been thinking about starting a podcast for 18 months before we actually started one, and we ran a couple of like test runs and stuff. I just knew that he and I could talk about stuff forever, and so I thought we would be, it'd be a good platform for us to do that on, and potentially maybe make money at it one day. So. Yeah.
Still to this point, we don't listen to music or anything. We're on the road. We'll drive to South Dakota and talk the whole time.
Yep.
Drive back, talk the whole time.
Yeah. It's weird. The camera guys get real tired of it.
They don't talk.
Yeah. They just put their headphones in, But no, it's that was kind of about the time that things started kicking off was in 2016. And I had decided, so my previous friends that were I was filming with, we all kind of departed for whatever reasons. And so anyway, started up with him. I just kind of asked him, can I walk around and film you, behind you on Texas Public or something, and he's like, yeah. He was always up for everything. And so I did. And I was just kind of, worried about like, hey man, I don't want you to feel weird or anything. And he never did. He kept encouraging it. And yeah, just along the way, like, years and years later, I look back and we just kind of like probably about 2017, the next year or whatever, we kind of like, we were a little more serious about it. And then I would say 2019 was 2019 or 20 was when we really started to like, be like, man, this could actually, be something that, it's not just a pipe dream or not pipe dream. That's not a good way to say it, but like a dream, that it's actually something that's real and could come to fruition. And then things really from like 20 to 22, things really just became emphatic pretty much. I mean, 20, I had a really, really awesome year. KC killed some nice bucks. And then just from there, it's just we've been blessed to travel more and more, every year, or as much as we could probably handle the last few years. And again, in 22, we, at the end of 22 is when we, we're in partnership with Meat Eater. So again, like a 2-year period, just all of a sudden it was like, and people call it overnight success, but it took so much time. It took a lot of time, especially considering that I toured for almost 10 years before that. My wife was like fed up with me trying to like live a dream, and she's super cool about it. I mean, she's not, but at some point she's like, hey, I mean, I legit claimed, this is just an insight, but like we were trying to get a loan for a house, and the most I could claim was $5,000 for the whole year. Like that's the type of money I was making, you know what I mean? It was terrible. So anyway, yeah, it was getting to the point where it's like something needs to happen, and just, blessed, man, that we knew some people. We had, for whatever reason, God had placed our path along the way in some people's lives. We connected, and they ended up, working towards a Meat Eater thing for us. It's crazy. I never would have really envisioned myself working for Meat Eater. I in fact, probably have made jokes about like that wouldn't, that would be, it just almost didn't seem like something we'd do, but
yeah.
Anyway, just really, really blessed, man. I don't know how else to explain it, really. Everybody works hard, I mean, a lot of people do. And that kind of stuff could happen to anybody, but for whatever reason, it happened for us. So I'm very thankful. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I know it takes a long period of time and consistent effort over a long period of time to, make anything work, and a lot of God's favor. That's probably 90% of it right there. But what, so when was the first time that you and KC like went out, filmed a hunt and out of state and like got it on film? What was that like?
Oh boy, let me let you know.
Does it have to be a kill?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're talking about a kill.
Okay.
Not when I missed that deer. It wasn't out of state either. So in 2016, Tyler hung out with me while I hunted pretty much on Texas Public, and I missed a nice buck. And it was kind of fun. I didn't really think about it like going forward. And then he had the podcast idea, and then we just kind of started doing this thing. And then he had a tag out of state, and I didn't. And so I was just like, I'm going to go film you. And that was kind of neat. It was kind of a different experience for me because I'd never traveled out of state to hunt. Sure enough, well, I've been elk hunting out of state, but for whitetails, I was explaining to my wife that I'm going to go on this trip, but I'm actually not a hunter. I'm just there. And she's like, what do you mean? Like it didn't even make sense to her. And we go up, hunt a little bit on a deer lease, and then I just took one wind shift, as the monologue says. We end up on public land.
Guys, when you look back at some of the stuff that you've done, you don't always prove.
No, you have to do that stuff.
You have to keep it out.
It's a learning process.
But sure enough, Casey Smith, the camera guy, got to follow Tyler to some public ground, and he shot a 150 on an awesome cold front. And
killed the footage, dude.
Thanks, man. It's the best film I've ever done, and ever since 2017, it's been downhill since then. So we hired camera guys. But it was sick. The second angle, leaves something to be desired, but the main angle was on point. Still might be one of the best follows that we've ever got.
Yeah. Stop, dude.
Between all of them. But yeah, that was my one shining moment in the film world. I filmed some other stuff. I filmed you shoot some pigs. That was pretty cool. It was like summer of 22. Eric and Michael were up front, and you and me just went on the pig slot back there in the back.
I just can't keep count all the times the A-teams had to come.
I know the A-team's got to come through sometimes down here. But yeah, that was, we put it together then. But, quite honestly, Tyler's always had such better vision for like how we would be able to do this for a living, and I'm so thankful for that because I just kind of have a blue collar mentality about things sometimes. And that's no slight to him by any means. And it's the opposite, right? I just don't think about like maybe what's just around the river bend, as Pocahontas would say. Right? I just don't have the insight for that. I just thought that filming hunts would be like a fun thing that we did. Maybe our high school buddies would think it was cool or something. I don't know. Or I just like to look back at the memories, and then around about 2019, we kind of were a little more serious about it, but I got down because I had a hard year. And then I went to Kansas and self-filmed a hunt there and got it all on film and grunted in a buck from a long ways off. It was my biggest buck ever at that point in time. And I remember calling you on the way home, like, man, I kind of get it now. Like, I think that we can do this, and ever since then, I haven't really ever lost confidence at that. There's been some tough times for sure. But the early season 21, we went to Nebraska, and we're saying state names now, sorry. But went to Nebraska. Tyler shot an awesome buck, and then we ran out of money and had to come home and just like wait on the YouTube money to hit for that month so we could go hunting again.
Yeah.
Because we didn't have any money.
Yeah. Dude, it was, I mean, seriously, like in 2018, I sold my wife and I moved into a house that was just empty in 2010 and spent 8 years putting floor in pretty much. We didn't have floor in that house the whole time I lived there. Like not the entire floor was not in until 8 years later. And anyway, so we sold in 18. The market had recovered a little bit, and we didn't make like a ton of money, but I made enough that I could continue. Like I could almost not work at all, which I worked. Just would catch days anytime I could with my dad, and he paid me from the time I was 18 to the time I was like 30. He paid me $10 an hour. So that was just what I got paid, like my
fair market wage.
I mean, I was like, yeah, whatever. I mean, he was super flexible, right? And apparently he just thought I was worth, with an economics degree from SMU, I was worth the same as when I was a 16-year-old, So
yeah.
But yeah, so that was like, I got to basically say, okay, I don't need to work for the next little bit here. And we literally drained every bit of money we made off that house by me. But I was able to edit videos, and we were getting 2 videos out a week on YouTube, which was big, And so that was that was my goal, to get 2 videos out every week on YouTube. And so we did that for a couple of years. And I think that was a big part of kind of building the audience and just me learning how to edit more efficiently and quickly and that kind of thing. And so I just had, but at the time we were living in 500, it was me, my wife, and my 2 kids living in a 560 square foot shop. And we had like a bathroom built into the corner, and they slept on a king bed and I slept on the couch for 2 years. I mean, and that's like what I put my family through to do what I'm doing today. So, and it really, like, I really tear up sometimes thinking about like how selfless my wife is, but also like what it took to get here and how blessed I am right now. Cause I failed after 10 years of playing music. I could have easily failed at this too, So it's just, I don't know, very grateful.
God's providence, man. It's like Christian was talking about a while ago. I think that one of the things, if you read Job, which I listened to a little bit of a study on Job this morning, it's a guy that has everything and everything is taken away from him. And God doesn't really have to give you a reason. Right. I think that if you can boil that down a little bit, God's going to give you a platform and for him to be glorified, because that's what our role here is on earth, is to glorify him. And so I feel like now that our job is to make sure that we do that. We're honoring to God in our actions. And it's not a, what's the cliche thing that people do? It's not a prosperity gospel per se, right? But it is a thing where it's like, man, I'm going to do my best to live righteously, not because that's how I get to heaven, but that's how I should be. And, hopefully, prayerfully, people can see that in us and what we do. And same for y'all, and I'm kind of rambling here.
Paul says in Romans 6 that you're either a slave to or you're a sin to obedience, which is you have a free gift of righteousness and reconciliation with God. So you can either pay or you can get something for free. and everybody likes free stuff. You know what I mean? So,
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, we've often sat here and maybe I can't speak for Jay, I can speak for me. Often, it takes a lot of sacrifice to do content, especially when when you have full-time jobs and other obligations. And this comes like fifth in your life sometimes. Right. And I've often said here like, man, why am I doing this? It's 2 a.m. editing a video. This is kind of silly. And then I'm like, I've had my heart softened a lot in the last 6 months of like, this is all because of Christ. Like, this is just a Trojan horse. This is just a vehicle of something that we enjoy. It's just a way to relate to another human being to ultimately share the gospel. And if that's not what you're doing, then what are you doing? What are you doing all this for? So
That's exactly
that's right, man. Ecclesiastes, Solomon writes, and he's done it all and seen it all and partaken in everything. It has all the money in the world. And he finds that, there's really no justification for doing any of it if it's not to God's glory, so, which I would agree. I mean, not just from reading that, but even, just like trying to intellectualize it in your mind. Like, what is the point if you don't have a creator to honor? You live and you die, so
that's it.
Which I'm sorry for being late earlier. Now I feel bad because it wasn't very honoring. It was a scheduling issue. It wasn't something.
It was my fault, actually.
We'll blame that one on Tyler.
I was sitting in a hotel in Bozeman, on Mountain Time, and you put a, 2 o'clock or whatever, and it ends up being 3 when you get home instead of 2.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's how it goes.
Sorry.
No, that's what I was telling Christian. I was like, well, if he was working on plumbing, I said, we probably better reschedule, because if you're anything like me and I try to work on something, even if it's like a 30-minute project that turns into 4 hours, I'm covered in stuff and I'm not in the right headspace to be able to sit down and have a conversation with people I've never met before. So I was like, we might just, try to reschedule this for like a different time just to be on the safe side. But
we fly.
it worked out.
We fly by the seat of our pants.
I mean, I was already thinking about deer hunting anyways, man.
Understandable.
Just need an excuse.
Literally, whenever Tyler texted me, I was actually picking pears because we'd gone on to go eat lunch and swung by that pear tree on the way back and pulled up in those deer underneath that tree. And I was just talking to my dad about all the strategies about planting pear trees and how I'm going to have deer underneath them and all that. So it just fits right in, man.
That's awesome.
They're on that wavelength.
Well, I mean, you guys talked a little bit about the, kind of the journey, flyby by it, but, you've had over the last, let's just call it 5 years, say an exponential amount of blessings and success in the woods, getting to travel all over the place and shoot big bucks, so how has your mindset kind of progressed, evolve, involving deer hunting? Like, is there certain experiences you want to get out of it? Is it just go and experience in new places with the people that you want to, while giving credit to the creator? Like, how do you guys view it now? Is it just for fun?
Man, that's a good question. I feel like a lot of times what drives me right now is like, I just want to do a good job, whatever that is. So like, now that it's, I mean, there was this thing where we built and built and built, and now have a little more security. I kind of want to just make sure that like I'm worth, the risk to people who I answer to, I guess, and I want to make sure that I do a really good job at it. And then there's, in the same, like some of the people I answer to are audience, you know what I mean? So like, I want to do a good job for them. I want one of the things that like when everybody listened to Wired to Hunt at some point and still does, a lot of them, like one of the things I always left a lot of those Wired to Hunt episodes wondering, or I struggled with, was like, I was wondering what that guy was actually talking about. Not Mark, but like the guy he interviewed. It's like, one time that, he asked the question like, well, if you've got 2 trails going into a cornfield, how do you know which one to hunt? And he just goes, you just got to pick the right one. And I was like, that doesn't help anybody.
That makes sense.
Who has that same question. I was like, golly, dude, like what, I mean, of course you have to pick the right one. How? That's the question, So like, I got so frustrated with hearing these guys that are big buck killers that would say things like that and wouldn't explain things well, or at least attempt to explain it well. And really what I started realizing is like, oh, these guys, I hate to be this, but like, I hate to say this, but like, these guys are hunting the baddest properties in the world.
So my granddad say stuff like that.
I know it sounds bad, but like, I'm not trying to hate on them.
Yeah.
I'm just saying
like
when you hunt 2 trails going into one of the baddest baddest cornfields in the world, you know, like you sit there a couple times, then you do pick the right trail, but it doesn't mean that you picked it because of some logic. So how do we get to the point where we're like, and that's that for me, a lot of what drives me is like, I want to figure out ways to explain to people how to do things better, because I truly believe this, guys. They talk about like this hunter retention and how our numbers are dwindling, which our numbers are growing, but like, I guess in the ratio of like human beings to number of hunters, I guess that's where they see loss. So, you know, at the same time, like, why are we losing these people? Well, I can promise you, if I am like a fringe hunter and I go out on Texas public land to hunt some deer, I'm probably not going back much more, because the experience is that I go out there, it's super hard. I can't figure out how to get my tree stand into a tree. And then I sit there for 50 minutes before dark after I worked really hard because I had to bounce around because somebody else was hunting in a tree where I wanted to go. And then all of a sudden it's like, you're sitting there for 45 minutes after you made a ton of noise. You don't see a deer, not one. And then you walk out and drive an hour home, and you get home late, and then you got to get up and work the next morning or whatever. And it's like, that's not a fun experience, really, you know, like, and so how do we have these guys have more success when they go out, so that like we have numbers of hunters, so that people don't start putting wolves in every state and doing all this stupid stuff, you know, like, you know what I mean? Like, let's have some logic involved. And the only way to do that is to have big numbers of people, you know? So,
yeah, I think that was well said. First of all, that's the thing that I definitely focus on. But, you know, I think your question was kind of like motive, right? Like why do we kind of do some of the things we do? And, you know, and in full transparency, it is how we feed our families now. So there is that, like what Tyler was saying, you know, to do a good job at that. But I'm always super concerned with being genuine. I try to be a very genuine person. And I think that it's important to have that genuineness and honesty in what we portray on film. So now the caveat, I'm a pretty excitable guy, so I get excited about near anything, right? So
we don't struggle to have fun.
No, we don't.
I mean, that's a big part of it.
That's what I am saying, though, is that I don't want to put anything on film that actually is not fun. Like, it's not something I want to do too much. I went on a hunt last year that I still had fun on, but I think I'm not going to tell you which one it was, but you'll probably know. But I think that it was a one and done type of experience, at least, where I don't want to hunt really particularly in that way again. And it's not saying I'm not going to want to hunt again by any means, you know, but like, I don't want to go back and continue to do that because I'd be successful every year. It's very easy. But you know, it was a private land thing. So it's not like hey guys, the public land's easy, you know, but you get what I'm saying.
It was only 5 acres. It was high fence.
Yeah, that's right.
It was tough.
His name was Larry. He just whistled.
Yeah.
But essentially, I want to do things that I enjoy so I can convey that genuine joy that I have for the activity for the people that enjoy watching it. And maybe they can then absorb some of that and have that exuberance for hunting as well.
Yeah. That's well said too.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Lots of joy is in there.
Yeah, and so much joy, man. I'm rejoicing
down
right
in
now.
my heart, right?
Yeah, that's good. I think that's great. We think about that part of it a lot too. Like, one of the things that grinds my gears is like the over complication of like hunting tactics and those sort of things. It's like, this ridge has a thermal drone tornado scent area in it. It's like, awesome. I'm gonna just act like I didn't hear that. Like, that makes no sense to me. So like
that and gear as well. It's like, oh, you need this new flagship bow to be able to kill a big buck. Well, from my own experiences, I shot a 14-year-old bow and I probably killed more deer with that thing than I did, my new V3 or newer V3. And yeah, I kind of think along those same lines as well, but I don't know. I guess there's different strokes for different folks, but
If you start getting newer bows, you'll throat patch them actually.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you think so?
Man, I like having. So there's this difference in like good gear and new gear, right? You don't have to always have the new gear, but having good stuff is nice. I've been real poor, and having crap that doesn't work or that breaks is terrible.
Oh yeah.
I'm editing a video where you have something that doesn't work the whole trip.
Which one?
The Arkansas one from last
Oh,
year.
my boat trailer, which I fixed. Yeah,
I had to
that's
replace the whole axle while we were on the deer hunting trip.
right.
It's part of the fun.
Yeah, it's so fun.
And he
Glad
goes,
you brought that
he goes,
up.
man, I'm glad to have inherited this, this boat, but I also inherited the problems that come along with it.
But like, I think that there's a point in your life where hopefully you've worked hard and have a little money to spend on the nice stuff. But you make a great point about like you don't have to buy the new stuff. Just get something that works, and then because here's the deal: you make X amount of dollars in your life, and you multiply that X times 0.0015, and that's how much you get to spend on hunting that year, because you have a family to take care of. Well, guess if you spend 0.0010 on a new bow, then you don't get to hunt near as much.
Yeah.
Right? If your old bow works, if you only have 7 arrows, you don't have to buy a new dozen to replace them.
3.
Right?
3.
Yeah. You go to the woods with 3 and 2 of them being different.
So when I
Hey,
first started, that's how it was, man.
Tyler's the original inventor of the 2-fletch.
That's exactly right. Yep.
We
She's
thought
actually
about
got 21 yards.
21 yards. You can hit a coyote.
we've thought
everybody
about
needs a
coming-
coyote arrow.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. No, actually, you don't. I found that out.
Hey, that was what I was talking about too that time.
Yep.
Mhm.
I shot a coyote one time, and it didn't bode well for the deer hunting.
Yeah. Coyote kind of made some racket.
And got
Don't do
attacked
that
by
from time to
twins.
Yeah.
And then the whole morning was just messed up. So yeah,
We were hunting the biggest deer we've ever seen.
I haven't shot a coyote since.
I keep adjusting my hat and it's going the wrong
Yeah,
way.
well,
I can't really do that. We've considered coming out with a product on the website called the miscellaneous quiver. It's where we grab 5 arrows out of a bucket and just put them in and sell them. Jake used to hunt, and I swear his quiver was AT&T raising the bar because they were just all different lengths and weights.
Hey,
Yep.
I only
You
had
know,
like
you
2 aluminum ones, like 3 carbon. So, Allen broadheads from Walmart, that was my specialty, man.
You know,
Yeah.
you could run if you had. Actually, I've thought about this for a different situation, but you could run a fixed single pin sight and just run different arrow weights, and then you have your 40-yard arrow, your 30-yard arrow, your 20-yard arrow.
That's actually a good idea.
You don't ever have to move your sight.
Yeah, it's just what happens when he comes running in behind the doe, and you need your 40-yard
ain't
arrow and
good.
20 yards on
That
the
ain't-
string.
You better know how to aim low.
Snort wheeze him, damn it.
That's
what
right.
you do.
Little
Yeah.
soft one though.
I was the same way, but like I didn't shoot a deer over 27 yards until I was like in my maybe 30 years old. You know what I mean? Like and so it's just different where like now I have more time to practice, and I mean I can see the difference in that arrow setup now a little bit. I'm not by no means in my Levi or any, like that, but I'm just saying like now it means a lot for me to again go do a good job, so I just I try to dial that stuff as much as possible, and it does affect you at longer distances, which I shoot more often now than I ever did in most of my hunting life.
Yeah. I get it. Well, guys, we kept you on for about almost an hour and a half, but before we go, we usually ask a question that we name Close but No Cigar. And what that is what is that one encounter or blown shot opportunity that you almost sealed the deal, but you just couldn't quite get it done? And why y'all think on that, the reason for this question is just because you know how it is on YouTube or outdoor channel, it's almost like a highlight reel nowadays. So just for the new hunter or maybe the later in life onset hunter, let's kind of bring it back to reality where, hey, it's okay to miss, it's okay to fail sometimes, but because that's just part of hunting. So we'll start with you, Casey. What's yours?
Oh man, I've got it. As soon as you said it, I know it.
Me too.
Tyler was there.
There's only one.
Well, there's a bunch.
Okay,
but the
because
one
he was saying there's just one.
the one that hurts the most.
Okay, the one that
being
hurts
so
the-
close and having so much to say. But
Yes, little flat.
is
You're gonna have copyright infringement now.
I know.
Well, you came in with a tune. That's where they get you.
I
The
know.
lyrics they can't
I
get
did
you.
it on purpose.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Trying to blacklist
Real
them.
talk here, guys. In 2019, I drew a really good elk tag.
Oh,
A really, really good elk tag. And I fancied myself an elk hunter, still do. But I was not prepared for what I was about to encounter. I just have always hunted like OTC units and just tried to kill a elk, and going somewhere where you are most definitely trophy hunting was a new experience. And long story short, Tyler and I hiked in 7.3 miles or something like that through some of the rougher country that I've ever been in. And with like probably 70-pound packs each, maybe more. I
we
don't know.
carried every piece of camera
It's
equipment
just
we
him
had,
and I.
dude.
Yeah. And so we carried a bunch. We're going to do like time lapses in the backcountry, you know. It's-
Gimbals,
Yeah.
all kinds of
Oh
stuff.
no.
And
Yeah,
so kind of beat ourselves on the way in. We gave ourselves a day to hike in, and it took a day and a half. So we showed up kind of at our predetermined campsite with a half day, and it was a little stormy, and we could hear elk bugling on top of the mountain right above us. And I was like, wow, this is crazy. Like we were just like filling water, like, should we go hunt them? And I was like, yeah, we should go hunt them, I think. So long story short, we sneak up to the top of the mountain. There's an elk festival going on, and there's like a little rut fest, and there's a hot cow. There's bulls fighting. It's wild, and a cow kind of runs off. I think she had somewhat spooked from us. A giant bull follows her, and I give him one little meow, just little yelp, or not yelp. What's a turkey? What is it called? Like mew. A mew, and he turns around, runs at us, and before I know it, like a 350 plus is at 20 yards, looking at me straight in the eye. I'm at full draw. He kind of locks up because he caught us out in the open. Tyler's completely in the open. I'm pretty much in the open, and he's holding the camera. I'm in front of him,
barely holding.
and I've got like oak brush from about his beard down, so I have no shot from where I'm standing there, full draw.
This is before we started throat patching stuff.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I would have aimed at a nostril if I'd have known. But I held full draw for like 2 minutes and 50 seconds, and then he wheeled out, and I was so rattled that he went out to 45, and I had another shot, and I ended up shooting my 65-yard pin on accident and missed him.
They're the same
But
color.
Yeah, same color.
You had a
pins.
7-pin sight, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's a
Oh,
good
wow.
point to bring up a tactic behind there. Having pins that are the same color is a bad deal. That are that close together. But you know, that's for sure my close but no cigar. I mean, as soon as you said it, like, oh, I don't mind, because it's just the biggest elk I'll probably ever have a chance to shoot at. I mean, he's every bit of 350, maybe even in the 60s or beyond. He's got extras and all kinds of stuff. He was just an amazing animal too, and the footage is sick. Tyler killed it. He bugles right in our face at 20 yards. And now it's just, you have to experience things to have experience, right? That's the nature of the word. And so now I would absolutely have killed that bull in that situation. I would have taken, whenever he was slightly distracted, I'd have taken a half step backwards. I was already at full draw. I mean, it's just step and shoot, pap. But in that moment, I was just frozen. I was like, okay,
Well,
any point in time, he's gonna give me my shot.
the cow was to our left,
Mm-hmm.
and all he had to do was just turn and walk to her, and it would have been broadside at 20 yards, you know.
Yeah.
And he just never walked to her for whatever. She was closer than he was to us, so it was weird. Yeah, I was sad, and I was shaking so bad when that happened. Everybody, like the camera view, it's like wide open, so everybody's like, "Why are you not shooting?" You know, they're so mad about it. Which nobody's really ever mad on the internet, so it's the first time.
Man.
But
It's been all peachy keen since then.
that's right.
No one's ever mad.
For me, I was in the state that I mentioned earlier. It has a bunch of weirdos in it, and I was hunting on the ground one morning. We were way back into a piece of property, and I had Michael, one of our camera guys, with me, it was just a disaster of a morning, really overall, just haywire. But we saw a rut fest happening down in this draw, and so I like run over this little ridge and down next to the ridge down into the bottom because I can see this kind of like tornado of deers going down, into the bottom. They're in the bottom, but they're going down further this direction. So I go across the ridge, down the side of the ridge, and basically go like right up to the end of the finger of that ridge. And I'm hoping that this kind of tornado ends up coming right past us. And I had a heads up decoy with us that it's like a 2-dimensional. It's just a neck and a head, and I had like one antler on it or something. This would have been the coolest video, and this buck is nice. Like I'm talking like probably like I would think mid 130s, 8, like slick 8. I mean, nice buck.
Yeah. But with mass and like he's
tall,
a big old mature buck.
Yeah.
He's not like a young one that has room to grow.
Yeah. So I go down in there, whatever, and I'm fixing to set up, and I see a deer run out from behind the hill at like 40 yards or whatever, and I just like immediately drop down and put the decoy up, and it's a spike, and he looks at us, and he's like, stands there for a second staring at us. I'm like, oh man, we're caught, whatever. And then he just kind of trots off down or whatever and kind of get like not really too concerned with us. And I was like, oh man. So all of a sudden, a doe comes out from behind the ridge or whatever, the end of the ridge there. And I'm like, all right, it's fixing to happen. So I like turn and get squared up, and the buck comes out right behind her, and I get my rangefinder on him, and he stops and kind of sees us like these silhouettes, and I range him. I think I ranged him at 47. And so I like roll my pin. No, I had a 40 set. And so I'm like, okay, well, it's going to drop, a few inches or whatever at 47. So I put my 40 high, and I can't even remember where I put it exactly on his body now, but I've told this on the podcast. Anyway, put it high on him, and he's looking right at us still. So this is the time that I did KC's tactic, and I went just nice and quiet. It was super quiet down in there. So I did it quiet, and at the same time I drew. So I snort, wheeze, draw, and he like lets me do the whole thing, and he thinks I'm a deer. I mean, and the reason I know this is because I put it on him and I squeeze, and it is going perfect. And he never jumps. We went back and watched it. The footage is primo, and he never jumps. And never.
Did he do the clutch jump thing where he like kind of
he does like that, but he thinks I'm a deer, so he never like fully ducks and like is like, what's that sound or anything, because he thinks I'm just a deer. I just snort wheezed at him, right? And anyway, it hits like so close to the chest cavity that it didn't, it didn't hit the chest cavity, but it hit kind of the back of his like tricep. And, like if he would have ducked to the arrow, it would have been perfect. And I was so sad, but like, hit him, and he runs off, kind of does some more rut stuff or whatever. And anyway, we never aired it because it hit him. And even though like there's a high chance that he survived, like it just, I don't know. There was one of the few times that we never we didn't put that on something on YouTube because, I don't know. There's just some things that just don't look good. You know what I mean? And I've talked about it on our podcast too. But we decided not to put it on there. Footage is awesome. It's a big buck. But the one thing that I learned, I got home and went to the bow shop, and my bow was like way out of tune, and it hadn't been in the like out of the shop that long, but we had been in so many different climates and temperatures and stuff, and running all across the country and plains and everything. Like, I guess it had just gotten out of tune. And essentially where I left pulling 71 pounds. And when I got back after that hunt and put it on the scale, it was pulling 67. So if I'd have been pulling 71, I also would have drilled him. You know what I mean? So it's just, there's fine little details like that can make it tough on you. And what I learned personally is like, if I'm hunting a bunch, then I need to try to get in there and run it through paper as often as possible, in between trips or whatever. So I don't know that pertains to like a bunch of other people as far as, things go. But like if you do go on an early season hunt, and then you're going to also be hunting the rut in Texas or whatever, it might be worth, running your bow through paper before you go on that late season hunt,
Yeah.
That's a good point.
That's a good point. So what are I know you guys talked about in the beginning how you're kind of teasing it out and figuring it out as you go, but what's on the docket so far for this season? Where are you guys headed?
Well, we're having a baby in September, so it kind of
not us.
Oh man.
Not
yeah,
us.
not us.
Where are you headed, Tyler?
Yeah. I listed off like 8 states to a friend the other day that I'm probably going to go to. Bunch of plain states, Illinois, more than likely, Arkansas, Texas. I actually have a Wyoming tag, deer tag.
Awesome.
So I'm actually real anxious about that one. So yeah, I'm excited and anxious. Because I'm kind of like, man, it's a whole new thing. It's going to be way different. I'm going to try to shoot a whitetail, but I don't know that that's going to actually happen because I don't think there's a ton of them in the area. But anyway, I'm going to go give it a try. And
why are you trying to shoot a whitetail?
I love whitetails
Because they're the coolest deer out there.
That's right.
Yeah.
No, it sounds like you need to send KC just a time frame. Okay, this day to this day is when you can spend time with your wife. Other than that, like just go work in the garden or something.
You think I would know that by now, but
he's we're gonna end up stacking a bunch of stuff in like late October into December. I mean, like most of our hunting is probably going to be there because he's going to be out until then, and so it's going to be real busy. I'm actually not looking super forward to being gone like 29 of 30 days of November or whatever. But which I don't know. It's not going to be that, but it's going to be a lot.
Make hay when the sun's shining, man.
Yeah, for sure. Well, guys, we appreciate. Oh, we're what are we doing, Jake? We're doing New Mexico elk. We'll go to Nebraska for deer. We'll do. I drew a Nebraska antelope permit too.
Oh, yeah.
We talked about that, yeah. And then we'll do Oklahoma. I actually drew a Texas permit this year. Praise God. I know it's crazy.
How about that?
Wow, dude.
Yeah.
I won't be in Kansas if that helps.
Oh yeah, I drew a Kansas permit too. Yeah. So
that definitely helps us.
Like me.
Yeah.
One less killer in the woods,
Well, trust me, I'm not doing no damage. Didn't do no damage last time I went, so they're fine.
Well,
they must only let the killers in this year.
We need to talk off air, Christian, about some of that Texas hunting you're fixing to do.
I know. We got to wrap this up. So where's the best place for people to find you guys if they want to watch your videos, listen to the podcast?
Well, our YouTube channel is The Element. If you wanted to be more specific, The Element Hunting will get you there quicker because it's kind of a little bit of a
skateboard brand.
Yeah, it gets all kinds of stuff for The Elements. But The Element Hunting is a good search on YouTube. If you want to find some of our stuff, all the stuff that we talked about today is mostly on there. Go be a positive point on there if you want, because sometimes there's foreign people on there that like to say not mean things. So, some nice things would be good.
Element Podcast on anywhere you find podcasts too. And I just want to say we're on Instagram and Facebook too. But Christian and Jacob, y'all do a good job, man. You do a really good job with what you guys do. I appreciate just some guys that take themselves the way that you guys take yourselves, not too seriously, but serious enough that like,
you're just saying that because you're on our podcast. All right.
Yeah. I wouldn't say it on my podcast. That's for sure, but no, for real. Y'all do a great job, man. I'm so glad that you guys had us on, man.
Jake's TikToks. It's you that's on TikTok doing like
Jake's that's fake,
right?
Oh yeah, those were the
in a previous
days,
life.
Let me tell you,
he gets a lot of views, man.
Yeah,
good stuff. Good information getting out there for the people.
For China,
I appreciate it. I looked it all up.
Yeah,
didn't do any of that myself. So
dude, the Chinese people are gonna be hunting deer so good, man.
I learned from him how to do that. You can do green screens on TikTok.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Oh, you're just teaching us stuff.
It's handy. It's handy.
Yeah. No, y'all do a great job, man. Thanks for
we appreciate it.
Build the community up and stuff like that. And I know you guys share a lot of just like down to earth knowledge, man, that makes sense and it's approachable for people. So if you're listening, subscribe to the Hunter's Advantage podcast.
Let's go.
If you're not already.
All right, we're going to clip that up and post it everywhere. I like it.